When I was 19 years old, I was still working at a nearby pizza place to help pay for food and gas and stuff. The job was always pretty easy, just taking the order, boxing up the food when it's done, putting it in a bag, and driving it to the given address. I'd done it a million times before, and nothing weird ever happened. It was very repetitive. Tips would usually be around $3 to $5 depending on the distance. Sometimes more generous people would give 10 or more though. I remember this order was just a chicken parm hero and a regular slice. Smaller orders like this usually yielded lesser tips, but I didn't have a choice in which deliveries I did. I was on my way to the address, and of course, the house was apparently on a dead-end block. This block had a more rural feel to it than the rest of the neighborhood. One of the houses had an RV sitting on the grass with a small patch of woods next to it. The other houses looked like little farmhouses. There was a lot more space on this particular street. And then I pulled up to the address. It was this small, weird-looking house with a huge property, though. It sat next to what appeared to be an abandoned house with overgrown grass and shrubs. It was probably around 6 p.m. and it was getting pretty dark out, so it was around the time people would start putting on their lights inside their houses. But all the lights in the house were off, and I noticed the front door seemed cracked open. I began to walk over to the front door, and I heard a piano being played. It sounded like it was a couple rooms away at least, muffled by some walls or a door or something. I knocked on the door and then rang the bell after a few minutes, only the doorbell didn't work. The piano was still playing. I felt weird just walking in, so I walked around the property towards the back. The backyard was a literal mess, things scattered all over the grass. I even saw a broken, rusty chain-link fence just sitting in the middle of the yard. I went to the back door and knocked really loud. I looked through the glass of the door and saw nothing except for what looked like a really messy storm room. Clearly these people were not neat freaks to say the least. When nobody answered the back door either, I went back around front and called one of the guys at the pizzeria to confirm the address with him. He took a second to check what he wrote down, and he confirmed that I was at the correct address. So I went back to the front door, pushed it open, and heard the creepy sounding piano music still playing. I yelled, "Pizza's here." The piano stopped, someone yelled, "Over here," then the piano resumed. They were playing this simple yet creepy repetitive song as if on loop. There were also no lights on in this house, so it was almost hard to see in there. I walked straight, getting closer to the sound of the music. The smell inside the house was very musty and off-putting. When I got halfway into, I guess what you'd call the foyer, I felt very uncomfortable. I wasn't going to go any further. I yelled, "I'm by the front door, sir." The music stopped, this time for good, and now there was just silence. I backed towards the door again so that I would be closer to the outside. I was expecting to hear footsteps coming towards me, but no, it was just dead silent. I said, "Sir?" And a voice from another room said, "Yes, sorry, I have trouble walking. Could you just bring it in here, please?" I asked, "What room are you in, sir?" And he took a moment to answer back, "If you just walk through the living room, I'm in the dining room." There were no directions on the phone to do any of this, so this was very strange. I thought for a second about my next course of action. I felt bad leaving in the case that this was some old, feeble man just living in a messy house. I started walking through the living room, and there was an opening that led to what I presumed to be the dining room. Me being my overly cautious and paranoid self was still suspicious. Instead of walking straight into the dining room, I peeked around the wall just enough for one eye to see into the room. I saw the piano, but there was no one sitting at it. I also didn't see anyone in the entire room. With that, I quietly but quickly walked back towards the front door, shut the door behind me, and drove back to the pizzeria. I explained that I got a sketchy vibe inside the house. My boss was completely understanding, especially when the alleged customer didn't call back asking why I left. That said everything. I didn't really understand the logic in trying to commit a robbery in your own house, and nor did my boss or coworkers. So later that night after work, I looked up that address, and that house was foreclosed on months ago, and it had been vacant. When I told this to everyone, they had the same mouth-dropping reaction I did. I was truly mere steps away from probably getting robbed. That, or someone was trying to play a horrible prank on an unsuspecting pizza delivery guy.